Hello, and welcome back to the Make It Count podcast. Success doesn't protect your health. And guess what? Most people figure that out too late. Today, I'm joined by Judy Gaman, CEO of Executive Medicine of Texas, award-winning author, and someone who's built her career helping people stay in the game longer, personally and professionally. She's worked across clinical research, publishing, and executive leadership, and she sees what most people miss until it costs them. Help me welcome to the podcast, Judy. Good morning, Judy.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on. It's so good to be here with you today.
It is such a wide breadth of things that you've done in different vocations. For those that don't know you, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I'm the CEO at Executive Medicine, and I have a complete passion for, believe it or not, keeping people out of nursing homes. I think this is really a goal of mine. Also, raising leaders. But let me tell you, my very first job was in a nursing home at 16. And you grow up really fast when you are feeding people and turning people, and these people can't help themselves, and you are their lifeline. And I think I was really young when I made a decision, I don't want to be in a nursing home. I really don't want to see other people have to go there. So if we can stay healthier longer, that is so important. And it's such an important part of my passion. And then, of course, there's the other side of just raising up leaders and loving on those people that I've been so fortunate to mentor, whether that's employees, or just young people in general. And I know you and I have spoken about this, and neither one of us would be where we are today if it wasn't for the people that have really fed into us, that have raised us up. And so being part of that is really an honor and a blessing to be able to pay that forward, just how it was, paid to us back in the day and still continues to be, I think.
Yeah, which is even the intention of the podcast, is to help pay it forward, help people that maybe don't have access to those types of mentors. You got into nursing home at 16. That by the way, that's the first in my life that I've heard someone as a teenager that was their first job. How did that come to be?
My mom was a nurse. Okay. And so I grew up in that world, and she was the director of nursing for a nursing home. And that was kind of a natural progression. That was my first job. I got certified as a certified nursing assistant. I felt, so important. I got a stethoscope. I had to learn how to take blood pressures and things like that. And it was a lot of responsibility. And I grew up in a home, maybe because I'm Gen X, I don't know, maybe because my mom was a single mom, but I grew up with a lot of responsibility from a young age. But that, I think, took it to a whole nother level, because when you have people like that are at the mercy of your help, and your hands are their hands, and your voice is their voice. And it was something that it never left me, but it really shaped me strongly. I think I've had a lot of jobs, because, I'm in my 50s. So I had some opportunities to have different careers and things. But if I look at what particular job had the biggest impact on me as a human being, I really do think it was that very first job.
Well, and it sounds the nursing home that you had been working in would have been more of a well-kept one, because clearly we see on the news, sadly, the level of neglect that can occur, what have you. What a great cause.
Yeah, it's so true. And man, I tell you what, my mom ran a tight ship. She ran that place like she ran the home. And they were very lucky to be, in her home. I was fortunate enough that the ADONs, which is the assistant director of nursing, got a position at the hospital, and she kind of recruited me over to the hospital. So my second job was working in the hospital. And that was really interesting. I worked med surg. I saw a lot of cancer. And I had some opportunities to work peds. And, you see these things, and you really get a perspective on life that maybe as 16, 17, 18, most kids just don't have that kind of perspective.
Right.
And I think that really served me well.
That makes sense. Now, you've built across medicine, research, and leadership, but your writing, especially Lucille's story, hits differently. What drew you to tell that story?
Well, it's interesting that, when you think back to what we just talked about and
Mhm.
this opportunity to write on in health and wellness, which is part of my job in here in the practice. I've written several books with the doctors that, have to do with living, like this particular was Age to Perfection, How to Live to 100 Happy, Healthy, and Wise. And at
Mm,
that point, I was doing a lot of the regurgitation of the research. What's out there, what's going on in the blue zones, what do we already know about living to 100 and doing it well, not
mhm.
drooling on yourself, not being in a position where you don't have a memory and things like that, but really live well. And during that writing of that, I had a writing assistant, and I just one day said, why don't we just ask the people that have been there and done that? Why don't we just
Mhm.
talk to the people over 100? I
Yeah.
was shocked, first of all, how many there were that could carry on great conversations, that had these vibrant lives. But Lucille Fleming was certainly just a gem. She and I just hit it off. We were attached to the hip for 4 years. She lived till just shy of her 104th birthday,
Wow.
2 weeks shy of that. But those 4 years, I mean, we just became best friends. She went out on book tour when that book came out. And when she died, she knew I was writing a book about our friendship. And that
Mhm.
was kind of neat. I wish she could have had a chance to read it.
Yeah.
Uh, I do feel like she kind of knows, because
Yeah.
whenever I'm out, whether I'm, talking to a group, I was just doing an event in Knoxville, Tennessee. And, whether I am talking to a large group or going over to a book club that's maybe read the book and and have being there for Q&A and such, I just always feel her presence. I just feel like she is just, that wisdom is always still there. I think this has just been a great joy of my life, and that opportunity to spend it with someone who literally moved to the United States with a suitcase in her hand and a locket around her neck in the middle of the Depression. Talk about
Wow.
perspective. I mean,
Right.
that's somebody who definitely has perspective.
Yeah. Now you mentioned Blue Zone. For people who don't come from the medical field or understand what that is, tell us a little bit about what a Blue Zone is.
Yeah, so there's these pockets of the population where people tend to, they call blue zones. I would assume it's probably because of blue hair, but they
Wow.
call them blue zones, and these are the pockets where people live quite well into their hundreds. We see this. There's parts of Japan. There's different places in the Mediterranean where they live really well.
Mhm.
Not just that their minds are strong, but they're physically active. And then there's also pockets of that we see in the United States. The LDS Church, they definitely have people that live a lot longer. The Seventh Day Adventists tend to live a lot longer than the general population. And part of this has to do with the lifestyle, and
Right.
some of the things like the word of wisdom. With the Mormons, they're really good about how eat meat sparingly. They don't drink coffee, they don't drink alcohol. So some of these lifestyle choices
Yeah.
are really actually helping them on a physical level, not just a spiritual level. So understanding kind of what this is that's helping people to live longer. An interesting thing about some of these places around the country is where the elderly are still like loved by the family. They're the
Mhm.
matriarchs. They're really involved. They still have a purpose, which that's a very important. Purpose is so important to longevity.
Yeah.
But where they are still part of that family and often living in that family home or really close proximity to the members of the family, they live a lot longer, and they keep their
Mhm.
mental faculties, and they are
Yeah.
physically active. It's just amazing that we have the opportunity as humans to
Mhm.
make choices in our life, and some of those choices can just prolong that life experience, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, there was a show, a document it wasn't a documentary, I don't know what maybe it was documentary, I don't know what you call it, on blue zones, and what'd you call them that live to 100? Then
Centenarians. Mhm.
centenarians. And most of the pockets were in other countries. There was a pocket they covered, though, that was in California. That was a blue zone at that time with a lot of the things that you're talking about. So for those watching, if you're super curious about that, don't ask me where it was streamed. Do you remember this? Did you ever see it at all or no?
Yeah, I think I did see that documentary. And
Yeah.
back on our podcast, we had somebody from the Blue Zone that wrote that. There's a book, The Blue Zones. Yeah,
There you
as
go.
well. Yep.
Easy enough. If you think about when you were writing the book about Lucy's life, what really stayed with you? Something that changed how you see, aging or living well?
Well, I think one of the big things about spending time with Lucille was that she had a knack for really seeing people. We would spend a lot of time together, and every Friday we'd go out. And I realized that I would kind of go through the motions of my day, my week, my months, my years, and I wouldn't really see people. I mean, I see my relative, I see, the people at work, but she would see the person that is serving her at the restaurant. She would see the person at the grocery store. She would see them in a way that was so unique. So she really helped me to really see people and understand people, and want to know them, and to love on them, even if it's one sentence.
Yeah.
She was just so good at that. There was something really unique that I learned and observed with her as well. And that was when we were out and about, there was always a connection. And I talk about this in my book, Love, Life, and Lucille. There was always a connection between the children, especially babies. They just could not take their eyes off of her. They were drawn to her. And she, of course, was drawn to them, but they were drawn to her almost like in some kind of familiarity way.
Yeah.
And I've always said since that experience that the ones who just got here from heaven and the ones who are really close to going back, they tend to have some unspoken connection. I just saw it so many times. There's a chapter in the book when Lucille and I were in Memphis, and we were on book tour. She flew around with me for book tour, which was a hoot. But we were there, and she had always, since as long as she can remember, supported St. Jude. So I set up a trip for her to go to St. Jude, and it was just so surreal for her to be there. And she had just really had a spot in her heart for these kiddos, and really believed in the mission.
Yeah.
And I write about this, but it's probably so much more eloquently written about that. I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest version here. But a mom brings her child out, and this particular child really was struggling. I mean, obviously had cancer, obviously was in a bit of a let's stay hopeful kind of situation. Yeah. And Lucille stopped to talk to her, and that connection between the two of them was so beautiful. It was so beautiful. And I was just like, this is so interesting, because you kind of see that same thing that you saw with the babies. Now, I would hope and pray that that child did well and recovered, but it was almost like they connected on this incredibly deep level, because for each of them, both Lucille and this young child, every day, every breath was a gift. It was not guaranteed they'd be here tomorrow. Right. And we lose that perspective, I think, in our everyday life. When we get busy, we just, make the assumption that, if I don't get it done today, I'll get it done tomorrow. If I don't, maybe I'll plan it for 3 years from now. But when you're in that type of position, or you're either that old or you're in an illness situation, you have a completely different take on it. Everything is more intense.
I love that you brought that up. Thinking around now they had some obvious reasons to believe tomorrow may not be promised, when the reality is all of us, right, are not promised tomorrow to, wake up and be breathing tomorrow. I had a friend that was in the gym 7 days a week. I think he'd missed one day in 30 years, hit by a car, killed.
Yep. You never know.
And we don't know.
Mm-mm.
The imagine think about, what do you think might be different, if you will, culturally, if we all lived from the perspective that if today were my last day, how will I have wanted it to be?
Right.
What do
I
you
think
think would
we
be
would
different?
probably put our phones down,
Mm.
and we would spend less time on a screen. I saw recently a very great presentation. It was a gentleman, I don't remember his name, but he was talking to these kids that were 18. And he basically was explaining to them with a chart, this is how many months you have left. If you live to the average
Mm.
age, this is how many months you have in your life. And then he kind of went, these are the months worth of how much you're going to sleep. This is how much you're going to spend in college. And, you kind of saw the little lines.
Yeah.
And then he said, if you continue with the average of how often you're on your screen, your phone, your computer, this is the number of months that you'll be staring at a screen. And it was this giant block.
Oh, wow.
It was just so powerful, so impactful. And I thought, they're 18. For those of us that aren't quite 18, think about how many rows of months we have left.
Yeah.
And if we don't get off of our screens, all the things we're going to miss. And it was a couple days ago, but it kind of haunted me a little bit.
Well, from a health standpoint, what would you say would be a healthy amount? Right. I mean, they literally started putting, what is that, blue filters in people's glasses because of looking at screens all the time. So if they came to you and said, okay, I have to look at my phone, I have to look at a screen every day, what would you consider to be the healthiest?
We talk to our patients a lot about this because when they're on their phones, there's a couple things that are going on. When you look down, the weight of your head just on your neck itself, what it does to your eyes, what it does to your brain. There's so many things connected when you're looking down and staring at a screen. And especially for scrolling. Oh my gosh, it's so taxing to the brain. But we say, we're not going to tell you to get off of it completely because it's not realistic. So you have to say, let's go through something that's manageable. You can either set your times up and you get 15 minutes, twice in the morning and 15 minutes in the afternoon. Or you get 30 minutes on your phone in the morning and 30 minutes in the afternoon. I know a lot of people listening are like, I could never do that.
Yeah.
But if you haven't done this, go on your phone and go into your settings. You can actually see how much time you've spent on the phone, and it tracks you.
Right.
And it's a real eye opener. And I encourage you to set that setting so you can see it, but also to check it. Check it every day or check it at least once a week, because you'll be amazed how many times, and I am guilty of this too, especially when I get busy, that all those little times you look at your phone, they add up. I remember one day I was super tired and I was like, oh, I should check my phone. See, I feel like I've been on it a lot. And I was averaging 4 hours and 15 minutes a day on my phone. And I was like, how is that happen? How is that possible? How is that happening? So the next week I paid attention to every time I was going to reach for my phone. And I was like, wow, I think that I'm reaching for my phone and looking at my phone and not even being aware of it anymore. There's a thing. I was once on, I used to do a lot of Fox News and Fox News radio tours as their healthy living expert and things. And there was this one study that came out on zombie eating. And this just makes me think about, this is being a zombie, but on the zombie eating, it was don't eat with the television on, because you're so into the television or you're on your computer that you don't have the connection of the hand to the mouth and how much food you swallowed. So in zombie eating, if you tend to eat in front of the television or while you're looking at your phone or while you're watching a movie, you in general will eat twice as much food than you would eat if you were just sitting at the table.
Wow.
So it's just a little connection. It made me think of that. I think that there's a little bit of zombie just looking at your phone all the time because you aren't even aware that you're doing it.
You reminded me of two different articles that I had read at one point. One was the general population touches their cell phone every 90 seconds. I mean, that's crazy, right?
Yep.
And then they did a study of people who do watch television, if you will, while they eat, and people who watch shows like Law and Order ate even a higher percentage of food.
Because they're anxious.
Because when they broke down the study, shows like Law and Order reminded them of their mortality. I thought that was incredibly interesting.
That is interesting.
Right? The way things can impact and affect us. The touching the phone every 90 seconds, I don't think I touch mine that much, but I'm definitely guilty. Right? And to your point, people look down like this. I probably am the weirdest looking person at the airport because I will hold it up here. Because I know
you're the smartest person at the airport.
I'm in my 50s, and that neck, I don't want to hump back here, right? From constantly looking down like this. So yeah, I'm that person that holds it up here. Too funny.
That's pretty good. That'll save you at least your neck,
We'll go with it.
You think about the people now that, the headaches have really gone up. It was almost even like in the 90s where we saw so many new headache medications coming out. And when nobody was tying it to that, we were spending so much time on the computers, especially the phones. We always had the phone, like you said, kind of looking at our phone, and all of this was happening. Our bodies were getting tired, our heads were hurting, and Big Pharma probably loved it because we're just all buying new medications. So it's, there's a real balance in kind of being aware of your body and your habits and recognizing them and making personal choices to not look at that phone, to maybe not binge watch the entire series in one sitting, to sit at the table instead, and better yet, sit at the table with your family and have those family meals.
Right. Oh, no, agreed. Now, when I was doing my deep dive research, I really get intrigued by people who've been in so many different aspects, avenues, if you will, of life. I think by nature, the way kids are taught in school is once you've picked your lane, get in your lane, do your job, save money, and then one day you retire. You just went in so many directions. So my questions are going to jump around a little bit. Are you ready for the next one?
I'm ready.
Okay. You've written across different topics: health, aging, and leadership. What pulls you to write, and what are you trying to capture or preserve?
I think every time I write something, I've written some fiction too. I wrote a book on architecture as well. I think whenever I'm pulled to write something, there's kind of a reason behind it. Mm-hmm. The Lucille book, that was just, I felt like everyone deserved a Lucille in their life. And the only way I was going to be able to give that experience to people was to write that down. And, a very interesting thing happened with that book. Then I'll finish answering the question a little more fully. When it came out in 2020, April 2020. Now that book, and there were so many plans for that book. I had something with the Texas Rangers. I had something at the Four Seasons. I had a 7-city book tour. I mean, it was just all planned out. I had a garage full of books because there were all these events that were going to happen. Yeah. And of course, they all started calling one by one to cancel. Right. And my mom, who we talked about, was always pretty strict. And she said, you get one day. You get one day to have your pity party, and then we're moving on. So, I took my one day, I laugh and say, oh yeah, I, pull up the cover, suck my thumb and cry my eyes out for a day. But, but then literally, I was just like, what am I supposed to do with all this? And I swear I just heard Lucille say, you know what to do. Get creative. And I thought about the people that were in these independent living centers. And I thought about, thank God Lucille wasn't still alive, because she lived by herself inside of these, because they weren't, they were inside their own little apartments, even though they were in a community, they weren't coming out of the rooms. So I was thinking about her, and I thought, I think I know what I'm going to do. So I called up some of these independent living centers and I said, would it be okay if I dropped off some cases of books and you distribute them to people that are in their rooms without a spouse or a roommate? And I think that was such a gift that paid back in spades, because one, I felt really good about it. It just really made me happy to be able to do something when we all felt like we couldn't do anything. I also really loved that, I got a lot of emails. I got people on my website and called me. I got letters that just what that meant to them. And I wrote notes in the front of every one of those books, and they weren't even the same note. I would just like kind of let the Holy Spirit just like guide me, How about you have lunch with us today? Heart Judy. And it kind of just felt like the more I hand wrote these, the more like, it was almost like therapy. It was like, oh, this is great. I'm having my own little book tour in my own little way. I'm just donating these books and these people are going to read them. And it just really turned out. And then when the world opened up again, the book did really well. It won a lot of awards, and all of the media stuff happened. All of the things happened, but it was really on God's timing. And so I learned a lot from that, sometimes it's not a prayer that's answered right now, but it'll eventually be answered in a much bigger way. I think it turned out to be much better. But to answer your question about, what drives me to write, it's generally when there's a need. Like I wrote a book, Stop Whining, Start Working, because there were so many people that didn't know how to interview. They didn't, we had these kids that were, and I say kids, people in their 20s that weren't showing up for interviews. All my colleagues that own businesses were like, I had like 5 interviews scheduled. People didn't show up, or they don't know how to write a resume, or they come in for an interview and they don't know how to interview. And I'm like, this is just going to be a how-to. And it was interesting how many people like bought extra copies and they gave them to like their kids, or they gave them to people they knew and said, hey, read this. I think it came full circle. And it was kind of fun when one of our daughters was looking to change jobs. And she happened to mention to us, she said, well, according to the book, I should blah, blah, blah. And I was like, she read it, because the kids never read your stuff, right? I was so impressed she actually had read it. But, there's always something behind it. I'm working on a book for the practice right now. And it's Be the Boss of Your Health. And that really was driven by the fact that the healthcare system is not set up, the general healthcare system is not set up in a way that lets the patient kind of be in charge, that allows the patient the education and the guidance to make really good choices for themselves. What's really happening in our world at executive medicine is we're empowering our patients. And so this BOSS method that we've developed with a biooptimization scoring system really helps them fully understand their own personal health, and then what areas, whether it's body, brain, biology, that they really need to hone in on and focus in on, and what we can help them with so they can take their health to that next level. Because back to what we talked about at the beginning, the ultimate goal is to keep people out of nursing homes, to put as much health in their years. Longevity is not just a number. Longevity is really about being able to do all the things you want to do, have the energy you want to have, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, even 100. That's so important. And it's just such a passion of mine that I love doing it.
Mm-hmm. When you talk, I have a friend that recently had a type of test. You'll know what it's called. Don't ask me. I don't know what it's called. But when I say this, you'll know. And they were testing for not environmental hazards, but lead, as an example, lead. They have more lead in their body than your general practice doctor doesn't test for those things.
Right.
What is that type of test calling, and do you all do that? And what are your thoughts around it?
Yeah, we do a slew of those things. Environmental toxins are super important. We do a lot of genetic testing, like New Amsterdam. That's a one that we do, 3x4 genetics. We do telomere testing, so we can see, what is your age? Like, maybe you're 50, according to the calendar. But what's your cellular age? Are you 45 or are you 65? Because that's going to give us a really good basis of what's happening on the inside.
Right.
So there's so many opportunities we have to do some really unique things. I think some of the maybe most impactful tests that we do, we do micronutrient testing. So we look at the level of micronutrients, 27 different ones inside the cell. So not, what did you swallow today and what's in your urine or whatever, but we actually send this off. It takes a couple of weeks to come back and we can look inside the cell. And what we found is a lot of times when people come in and they have particular symptoms, maybe they're tired, maybe they're on testosterone, but their testosterone isn't uptaking and they don't know why. There's something going on. And then we look and we're like, okay, now we get it. Now we see what's happening. Maybe your phosphorus is low. Maybe you don't have enough copper. Maybe you have too much of something. That happens a lot too, because people will take a handful of supplements that they maybe got out of the grocery store, they got it off the internet, or they got it over at GNC. Then they took another handful and they don't realize that some of those same things are in both supplements. And then they end up with a variety of symptoms because they're pretty much overdosing even within the cell. So it's not just, you hear the old, well, if you get too much, you're just going to urinate it out. That's not necessarily true. And so that's kind of one of those things where that sounds really good, but that's not always the case. So, I think this is the important thing for us, is to have the tools in the toolbox.
Right.
And when the patients come to us, we need to have the tools. Not everybody needs the same tool. When you take your car in, the mechanic doesn't do the same thing to everybody's car.
Right.
The mechanic assesses your car and then decides which tools do I need to really, first of all, figure out what it is, to make the diagnosis, and then what tools do I need to correct the issue. And that's really what we do when we have our patients come in and they spend a half a day with us and go through a battery of tests, brain mapping. Some end up doing brain mapping, and we just have a lot of tools in the toolbox, and that's so helpful.
27 nutrients within the cellular level. That is, I don't want to say crazy, because it's not crazy. It's amazing. And people take these pills because they think they're doing the right thing. You're taught, take these vitamins and take this fish oil or what have you. And how would they even know that those things are in it? And how, like you were talking about having
they wouldn't know. Or they take, we see this a lot too. People want to be healthy, so they eat a lot of, maybe it's kale or spinach, or they have a lot of very healthy foods in their diet, but then they're also taking a lot of supplements on top of it. That's not always a good thing either. It's all about balance. It's about getting those, the right amount within the cell that is actually able to work for your body to be able to do the things it needs to do. The body is a beautiful machine, and it's just wonderfully made. But we have to realize that we have to treat it as such, not abuse it. Another test that we do is called the Gallery test. And this is a very fascinating test because it looks for all these different cancers. And we find them before we would see them on imaging, before there'd be symptoms and such. And a lot of times they're negative. And that's a really good reassurance for somebody who's like, I'm just terrified. My family's had cancer. I've been tired or whatever. And then sometimes we find something, but we're able to find it so early that it doesn't turn into a death sentence. And that's wonderful.
Yeah, another blessing, right?
Another blessing. I will tell you that when I had the Gallery test, that was the longest 2 weeks of my life. I'm like, I really hope that this does not come back positive. And I'm normally a very positive person, but I'll tell you, I found myself like planning this out in my sleep. Is my will up to date? Like, what if? I think it was good because we often don't think like that. But I was very relieved when it came back that I didn't have anything. We had a case recently where we had somebody, it came back positive for head and neck. And so we knew there was something head and neck. And this particular, some of them are very specific. They'll tell you exactly where they are, and some will just be the general area, because it's a really unique blood test. And when we sent to ENT and we said we got a positive Gallery, we know it's head and neck, and they couldn't find it, but then they did a CT. They saw something, but it didn't seem that big of a deal in the sinuses. But the ENT physician said, I'm going to go ahead and go up in the sinuses and biopsy it, and it was cancer. And and it was early, very early, and was able to get it out, and no radiation, no chemo, nothing. But by the time that patient would have had symptoms, that's, sinus cancer, that's pretty serious. So you gotta really, weigh these things. Even though it might be a scary test to have, the chances of finding something early and in curing it. I mean, if we find it early, we can cure it. So it's a blessing. It's a blessing to be in this practice where we are on the prevention side and able to save lives, even when the lives don't even know they need saving just yet.
Right. For clearly your practice isn't in all cities, all states. For people who may not have access to where your facilities are, how would they go about finding this sort of resource in their communities?
Yeah, we see people from around the globe, not just in the United States, but in different areas. There's not anybody quite like us, but if you are on our website and you see a particular test, like the Gallery test, and you say, oh, I really want to get that test, you can go to the website of some of these places like Gallery, and they'll have a section that'll say, find a provider near me. They can be able to find that way, whatever it is they're kind of looking for, find somebody that is doing it that's kind of close to them.
I just shared your website as well in the comments for people who would be interested. They can certainly start there. It sounds like that's the perfect jumping off spot.
Absolutely. I think it's a great spot to kind of look, and if you're not local, kind of see what are the things you want to look into maybe in your area.
Yeah. Love that. Okay. We ready to go on to the next? I'm gonna get this hair off my shoulder. I told you this hair drives me nuts. Okay. All right. Let's see. We are, you're in a world where most people wait until something's wrong. How has your work shaped the way you personally approach your own health?
Wow. This is going to be a little bit of a loaded question, because when 23andMe came out, the first thing that they kind of did before it was out there in public, they went to the different providers and they said, we're going to have this test. It was all new. Nobody knew what it was really. And if you'd like to do it, we're going to have this. I can't remember if it was free or we just paid a lower cost. I think they were just trying to get it off the ground.
Right.
So I decided to do it. And I said, I'm going to do that. I want to see what my genes say. And my mom has since passed away from Alzheimer's. And a big fear of mine was getting Alzheimer's, or, maybe, being subjective to particular cancers that are in the family history. So when I first got the results, it did this. I don't know if it still does this, but it did this thing. It's like, your results are ready. You click on it, and there was a screen that said, some of these results may be sensitive. Are you sure you want to read them? And I'm like, yes. I click yes, and then
I was going to say no at that point.
And then it came up again, and it said, "Are you certain?" And then there's like a warning, that that's this could be, if you know this, this whole paragraph about. It could have psychological effects, or just because you have the genetics doesn't mean you're going to have it. I mean, it was like paragraphs. You had to sign a consent. I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I have? That's so bad. So I think curiosity got the best of me. I think some people would have just said, no, never mind, don't want to know. So I clicked on it and read through it, and there were a few things, but maybe the one that sat the hardest on my heart was that I had some genetic markers for Alzheimer's. So kind of knowing that was a bit of a family issue, and seeing that, my name on that, and then kind of what those markers were, I took it to heart in a different way. I didn't say, oh my gosh, here it is, here's what's going to happen.
Right.
What I did was I said, I'm going to do what we tell our patients to do. And I'm going to really look at what were the things in my mom's life that probably turn these switches on. Because even though you have the genetics, it doesn't mean that you've turned the switch on. There's something called epigenetics, which means that you can have all kinds of genetic predispositions, but unless those switches are being turned on, you may never get these things. So I really thought a lot about my mom. She was alive at the time that I got this result. And I thought, most of my childhood and even my adulthood, my mom did not sleep. I mean, she slept maybe 4 or 5 hours a night. So, okay, we know that getting really good sleep, and even now we know more than we did when I was reading that, is really important. And then I started thinking about my mom's nutrition. She has a sweet tooth. I have a sweet tooth, but what her meals were sporadic, probably because she was third generation workaholic, or I'm the third generation, so she was second generation workaholic, and just really kind of dissecting that high stress. She had some things in her childhood that I was not ever exposed to, praise God. But I started thinking about it. Okay, what can I do? What can I do in my diet? What can I do in my self-care? What can I do to prevent this? Because it all goes back to, I don't want to be in a nursing home. Right. So how can I empower myself? And this is the same approach we take with our patients. We're going to maybe uncover, not always, but sometimes we're going to maybe uncover something that is going to put you in a position to act in some way on your health. And we're here to help you figure out, what does that look like? And how do you act on that health, to make it, that health information, to make it a more positive outcome? And so I just really dove into kind of the things that we teach our patients, and things I've written about, and just all of these tips and tricks and science and just decided more information is better than less information. And I will tell you, I did buy all the books, brain things and test your brain quiz. And I mean, I'm not kidding. Like, after my mom passed away, I don't know, I stopped buying them, but I had volumes and volumes of these brain level 4, level 5. And at night I'd do one, and I'm like, okay, good, I don't have Alzheimer's today. And I'd close it up, put it on my bedside. Next day I'd open it up and I'd do one. And then I go, let me see if I can do a level 5. Then one time I got stuck, and I'm like, oh my gosh, am I slipping? So I handed it over to my husband and said, I can't figure this out. And he's like, oh, this is hard. And I'm like, okay, never mind, give it back, I'm good. So, we all have our little idiosyncrasies. And I think that was mine. I just needed to just have a little reassurance for a while.
Right.
And then, I'm good.
Well, you mentioned sleeping more as one of the things. And then you were saying something about diet. Are you talking about eating at consistent intervals?
Eat at consistent intervals. Intermittent fasting is good. Making sure you get enough water. I don't think I ever saw my mom drink water. I don't ever remember really seeing her drink water, and especially not as a child. She had a cup of coffee a lot. She'd walk around with a cup of coffee. But maybe now we're more into drinking water and we're more aware of it than we really were. It's really easy with today's lenses and goggles on to look back, but we can't really do that. We have to put those goggles and those lenses on we also didn't have seatbelts, so, we can't judge everything with what today's lens looks like.
Sure. The learning in that is so rich for people. So I appreciate you sharing that. Let's see. Okay, we're gonna shift. We're gonna shift a little, I think, here. I'm like, clearly we spent some time. We're not gonna get to all the questions, which is gonna be tough for me. Da, 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 da. Leading executive medicine of Texas, you're operating in a space that challenges the traditional system. What have you had to see differently to lead there? Now, we've talked a little bit about the testing and things being different, but what did you have to see differently to lead in that kind of a space?
I think we had to change our shift a little bit because we're a luxury medical practice. Our doctors don't see massive numbers. That was their past life where they had 5 minutes with every patient, and it was like a maze and a rat race, like what you would see in the usual doctor's office. I think we had to make a mental shift. And I remember having an all staff meeting, and I said, we're a luxury business that happens to do healthcare. And that was so weird for everybody. I said, because healthcare has a very different connotation, often negative, because of people's negative, their experiences and the conversations that you hear. Oh gosh, I went to the doctor, they slid the glass over so I can hear, shut the glass. I sat there waiting, until somebody hollered my name from across the room 45 minutes after my appointment time. So I think once we as a company really grasp that mindset, and then what does our patient need from us? And what is, you hear these terms like avatar when you're talking about marketing. We really did a deep dive into what does our avatar, or our common patient model, like that person, what do they want? And we call them JJ. We give them two J names, a male and a female. And they want to be heard. They want to be respected. They want to have answers. So we have this whole list of what they want. And then how do we give them what they want while providing the highest level of service and the highest level of education and all of these things, and match that? And I think we've been able to do that. And the doctors love their job, which is kind of unique in healthcare too. They love their job, and the patients like coming in, and the staff, they love coming to work. So it really has worked for us.
And it's true. You have to have a clear mindset on what you're attacking. Let's see here. You talk about raising the next generation of leaders. Here we go. We're into the leadership piece. What do you believe they need most right now that they're not getting?
Oh, I think they need guidance. We take these young people and we fill them full of facts. And here's what you do, and checklists. And sometimes they just need some realistic advice and love. I think there's a way to love on them. A mutual friend of ours, their son actually was an intern with us. When he came to us, he was thinking he wanted to go down one particular road, and the parents thought, I think he could probably aim a little bit higher for what he wanted to do. So we got him, and he was very rough. We got him a freshman in college, and I remember having some conversations with him. I'm like, okay, so before you can come to work, you got to cut your hair. You can't look like a frat boy. You can't come here looking like that.
Right.
Yes, we're going to give you scrubs, but you know what? You're going to have to iron them. Don't come in here wrinkled. They'll just some of those kind of things. We're going to teach you some things, and no, you can't be on your phone. And no, we don't say bad words at the office, even if you're hanging out with somebody in the other room, because I think a lot of times these things just aren't taught, or nobody nobody even in the business world is talking at this level. They're just like, oh, they need to be fired. No, then they need to be guided.
Right.
So this I love this story because this was kind of fun. So there was a conversation that this particular young man wanted to learn chess. Well, one of our founders is really, really good at chess, and at one point in time, beat a grandmaster and still holds a really high ranking in chess, and loves chess too. So we put a chessboard in the office, and that's what they would do at lunch. He would give them chess lessons,
Okay.
and they would play chess together. And then there was a real sweet moment when the doctor actually gave one of his favorite really old chess books to this intern, and said, "Yeah, I've held on this a long time, but I think you'll find it helpful." And I think it's those kind of relationships that are really about leading up that next generation. It's
Yeah.
not, okay, let me give you the 5 rules to it's really about, how do you exist as a human? How do you let somebody mentor you in a way that someday you're going to mentor that next generation? As a
Mhm.
growing company, we've taken some of what would have been, that next level of management. Like they were in manager roles, and as
Right.
we've gotten bigger, one of them, who the office managers, turned into the COO. The director of business development became the CRO, and so now we're teaching them how to raise up that next person underneath them. That's that
Right.
middle management, and that's been really rewarding to watch them grow. And I've got to give a shout out to Pinnacle Global Network, because I'm a member of that, and that has been an incredible journey. And these particular young people have been part of the scale team, and they have learned how to scale a business from some of the best of the business. And that those mentors, you never stop needing a mentor. Like
Right.
I have mentors right now. My scale team has mentors, because someone above you already knows some of those things. They're ahead of you. They've seen that road. They're going through it with a machete, and then they're clearing it for you. But they're telling you, hey, these are the obstacles. These are the pitfalls, and you have something to lean on. And that's beautiful. And I think because I've been able to experience that myself, I'm able to then put my hand and grab the next person and pull them up, because I got someone over here lifting me up to the next level. It's it's a great thing. It really is. And big shout out to them. Allison Maslan, she was the founder of that, and that's an incredible global network. It's just incredible. Pinnacle. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say clip it. That's just for my recording, because we're live right now, but that way it remembers to pick this particular piece up for us. Meaning what you were just sharing on Pinnacle. Before I retired, helping grow leaders, right? Similar. There are a couple things that I found to really help people anchor into, which came out of a lesson where, do you remember when millennials entered the workforce and everyone was freaking out, right? Because I think there were three or four generations still working and they couldn't communicate. Well, I didn't have those issues, right? And I had people on staff that were 17 and 70. Like, why do we not have communication challenges like that? And I realized it's because I taught values-based leadership. Joy is joy. Doesn't matter your age, right? Love is love. It evokes certain commitments and emotions. With leadership coming out, because and I'm sure you've seen this too, when you first start to get somebody and they're going to become a leader, they're going to deal with conflict and communication the way they had learned it in their home, the way conflict and communication happened in their home. The springboard that I found, I'd love your thoughts on it, to help them with that, was to more anchor in values and then have some filters, such as assume positive intention first, right? Assume positive intention first. That way, before you go approach a conflict, what could have been the positive intention? as I share that, and I know we're totally off script, which I told you happens, and you think of the leaders you formed or other elements to that, what are your thoughts around that?
Oh, I think you're spot on. Absolutely. I think about one of the people that's on my scale team now, and I don't even know how many years ago it was, 5, 7 years ago. She came, maybe 5. She came to work for us, and I saw something in her, and I just adored it. But little hot around the collar from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
And I love her like a daughter, redheaded, just spitfire, love her, love her, love her. And I pulled her aside and I said, I got big dreams for you. I got big plans for you, but you got to fix this.
Yeah.
And because this is going to be yours for the taking, but this has to change. And that was probably one of the most impactful, I think, conversations that we had, because I wasn't just going to say, yeah, it's not going to work out. I still saw in her what just needed to be harnessed a little bit,
Yeah.
because you really want these strong personalities, because they'll have some thick skin. They'll think forward. They won't be afraid to make a mistake. There's certain things that you want that comes along with the flip side of that.
Right.
Yeah, they're strong, but that might mean that they might be bullheaded. I look at myself, and it's funny. I was with some CEO friends, and we did this little exercise where we all thought of a different adjective for the other person. Like, we named the name, and everybody would give one adjective. And there were, visionary and those kind of things. And one person said stubborn, and I'm like, that's accurate. So we have to kind of know that there's a yin and a yang, right?
Right.
We could do this really well, but there's the other side of being, that visionary, that powerhouse, or pushing something forward. And that's the stubborn side. Or, it might be somebody I don't have this, but somebody might have, just a quick reaction time, and maybe not think through, was this the best choice of words? I mean, I think I've certainly had my chance of saying the wrong thing,
Sure.
putting my foot in my mouth, for sure. But I think I've learned to tame that over the years. But that stubborn thing, I don't know. I think that's genetic. That should have shown up on my genetic test.
What a great exercise, though, too, even just for team building, right?
Yeah, it was. We were all past presidents of the Cowtown Executive Association, so we were doing a little retreat, and it was fun. It was really fun. It was fun to hear how people see you, but also when you're saying the adjectives, to hear how everybody else sees the same person that you see, and kind of what their adjective is. It's kind of fun. We did this with our staff. I didn't tell them this is kind of a little bit harder when you have, 35 people, but I passed around a sheet of paper. Everybody got their own sheet of paper, and everybody's name was on there except theirs. And they were to write one word next to each name and then confidentially hand it in. They didn't know why, what comes to mind. And so when they came into a staff meeting in January, I said, find your spot. And so they were all framed in a little 3x5 frame. And at the top it said their name, and it said, life can get busy and chaotic and sometimes tough. So in case you forget who you are, let us remind you. And had like all the adjectives that people had come up with. And it was fun, and some of them were funny. And, but there was a lot of love in that exercise. And I think it was good for them to have it. And they all have them sitting on their desk, which is nice.
Yeah. There are a couple more. Are you okay if we go a few minutes over?
Yeah, I've got about 5 minutes.
Okay. I'll try to make it quick. So there's a verse, Romans 8:28, and it's about things working together for good. When you look back on a moment that didn't go how you planned professionally, where did you later see that shaping something better?
Oh, that Lucille book in COVID was definitely one of them. But I
Yeah.
think that's not the only time. I believe COVID was probably one of these times. It was 2020. A lot of things happened in 2020. That
Yeah.
book coming out, we had just started an expansion and we were in construction for a giant expansion for the office.
Mm.
And then of course we're shut down in the middle of construction. So we were able to have the construction go ahead and be completed. And they were working on that. It kind of worked out because we were out of the office, so we didn't have to close the office for that. It was already closed, and we were only closed like a couple of weeks because we were on that list of, what do they call it?
Necessary businesses. You were a
Yeah, yeah,
necessary business.
relevant. Yeah, whatever it was, there was some term for it. So we were on that list, and during those couple of weeks, maybe it was more than a couple of weeks, maybe it's 4 or 6, I don't remember, but we told the staff, we're not going to let anybody go. We don't know how long this is going to go. We're not going to let anybody go. And I was very, very proud of my leadership. Several of us just said, without telling the staff, we're going to cut our pay so we don't let anybody go. So a lot of us cut our own pay voluntarily.
Yeah.
Just in case, we just didn't want to lose our people. And then we had set up remote work from home, remote stuff. And we kind of did that before they closed us down. It was really insightful how that whole thing kind of came to be, that some of these things were in place, that it's kind of a God thing, God wink, that we had started doing some of these things before it was even necessary. So what we did is we told the staff, what we want to do is reach out to our patients. They're probably scared and they probably are seeing all kinds of mixed information.
Right.
And some of them had elderly parents, and maybe they had other relatives that they're worried about because those people had maybe illnesses, and what does this look like? And so we spent that time not feeling sorry for ourselves, but instead smiling and dialing our patients. How are you doing? You have any questions? Do your parents live nearby? If we didn't know, just asking those questions. And that actually, I think, is some of the people, when they give testimonies to the practice, they remember that. And how many years ago? I think it was like 6 years ago, and they're like, I remember during COVID, you called me. And I think that was one of those times where it didn't turn out the way we thought it was going to be, but it turned out that we elevated our practice maybe even a whole nother level, because it was about that personal connection and reaching out, not waiting for a patient to call us, but really reaching out. And that's been, I think, a bit of a game changer. Another thing that came out of that was the original start of our book club. So our whole staff, we have a book club, and they have to read particular books. We read them on our own time. And then when we have a all staff meeting, we go through them and we talk about them. So we've done like Unreasonable Hospitality, which, by the way, every business should read. That's good. Great things came out of the practice from that. I should actually write the author a letter about that. There's just been the Go Giver. Everybody had to read the Go Giver. So I mean, we've got, I don't know, 5, 6 books that have kind of gone through the book club, and people, it's kind of shaped the practice, and that is just another good thing that came out of a bad situation.
Yeah. Wow. Well, before we wrap up, what is something you want to leave everyone with as far as things to do or what have you? What are your parting thought for the audience?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna leave you with something that Lucille would say, and that is, as long as you have breath in you, as long as you are still breathing, your heart is beating, you have a purpose.
Yeah.
And you need to find it. She talked about how she found her purpose, when she was about 103. This is when she told me this. She said, everybody has a purpose. I just found mine. I'm a longevity expert. So go find your purpose. And I promise you, it will pay you back in spades when you're living in your purpose.
Love that. Thank you so much, Judy, for making the time. And everyone, we will see you on the next episode. Okay, there you go.